Let's face it, chores are just a part of everyday life. But you know, the hours that I spend in my garden are some of the most enjoyable. Hi, I'm Alan Smith. As a gardener, you know that there are certain projects you need to accomplish to ensure success not only in this season, but in the seasons ahead. So in this show, I thought we'd take a look at some time-saving and money-saving tips that will help you through the winter, spring, summer, and fall. For instance, what precautionary measures should you take in your garden if the forecast predicts ice and snow? And we all want blooms in our gardens, right? I'll show you tips for getting the most out of spring and summer bulbs, plus find out about pruning and how to keep a step ahead in the garden. I've got many more tips that will help you find success in your garden in every season, so stick around. During the winter, the weather can be especially unpredictable. Ice, snow, low temperatures, high winds, these all can play havoc on our trees and shrubs, which can be expensive losses, not to mention the amount of time it takes to raise a mature plant. So let's take a look at some ways to keep ice and snow from damaging them. I've learned that tying up certain hedges and large shrubs, like this boxwood, can keep the snow from weighting down the plant's limbs. And knocking the snow off trees and shrubbery is a good idea. It will keep plants from bending and breaking. But don't try to knock the ice off your plants. Let the ice naturally melt to avoid damaging limbs and foliage. It's interesting, when there's a chance of bad weather, everyone flocks to the grocery store. But you know, if you want to protect your trees and shrubs, the best place to go is probably the hardware store. You see, younger and newly planted trees can literally be uprooted by the weight of ice and the force of wind. About the best thing to do for them is to make sure that they're well staked and guide. For larger trees and shrubs, what you want to do is help them at their weakest point, and that's always where a branch departs from the tree trunk. Now, I've done this by wrapping the tree with rope and anchored it to the wall. Broadleaf evergreens like hollies and magnolias are more vulnerable than deciduous trees because of increased wind resistance and more ice on their leaves. Seeing damage like this can not only break your heart, but also your pocketbook. So it just makes good sense to try to take care of our plants and protect them. Start by mulching your flower beds. You might be surprised how much protection a layer of mulch will provide your plants over the winter. Use bark, straw, pine needles, or leaves. I even use my old Christmas tree and garland. In my vegetable garden, I like using frost blankets like these to protect young plants. You can also keep winter vegetables growing longer by using a movable cold frame. To keep my tree roses from being damaged, I protect them from extreme temperatures by wrapping them with burlap cloth. These are just a few suggestions that you can put to use that will take the worry out of winter. If you'd like more ideas, just check out our website. Winter can be both beautiful and frightening, especially for gardeners who've spent much time and money creating peaceful hideaways they call their garden. Now, this was the case for me when a sudden winter storm rolled across my area last year. Now, this was no light dusting of snow. It was an all-out ice storm that left my garden and neighborhood a little worse for wear. But it was the pre-planting in the garden that really saved the day. I was especially worried about my crabapple trees. You see, I have 4 Narragansett crabapples in my oval or rondelle garden. I always look forward to seeing their lovely white blooms in the spring, and I couldn't imagine losing large limbs to the weight of the ice, so I took action. One way I protected them was to brace the large limbs with boards. This will keep them from sagging and snapping once the ice settles and begins to weigh down the limbs. Now, my crabapples came through all right. I did lose a few limbs, but the real loss was a columnar American holly in my fountain garden. It literally snapped in half. When something like this happens, you just have to step back, as hard as it may seem at the time, and say, well, you win some and you lose some. In this case with the holly, I just cut off the broken trunk and let it heal. and eventually the tree caught up with the other hollies. Now there are actually some benefits to these cold temperatures, snow and ice. There's nothing quite as beautiful as a gentle snowfall. Did you know that snow can actually make an excellent insulator? Just a few weeks ago, many of my spring flowering bulbs and perennials were already beginning to emerge, and now they're covered with this thick blanket of snow. This will keep the plants and ground at a temperature of 28 to 32 degrees, which is much warmer than the wind chill. And as the snow melts, it becomes a valuable source of water for plants, as well as replenishing nitrogen in the soil. While melting snow can benefit our gardens, ice is a different story, particularly when it's on paths and walkways. It can be treacherous. So when trying to eliminate ice, use something other than salt. Sand is a good choice because it won't hurt the plants once it melts and gets swept off the walk into the yard. And sawdust is another environmentally friendly choice, and so are commercial products that are calcium chloride based. Sodium chloride, or ordinary table salt, may melt the ice, but it will also kill your grass and flowers when it comes in contact with them. Snow and ice may be a nuisance, but we all have to remember it's all part of the winter season and nature's way of getting your garden ready for spring. The next time you hear there's snow in the forecast, don't cringe or worry. Remember, Mother Nature knows what's best. The main thing is just to have some fun and enjoy it. Next, we'll come out of the cold and into the warm as we prepare for spring. And a little later, some great ideas that will help keep you a step ahead in the garden. Autumn means many things to many people. Falling leaves, Thanksgiving, and for me, the chance to plan my spring garden by purchasing tulips, daffodils, as well as other flowering bulbs that must be planted in the fall. Each year in the Netherlands, over 9 billion flower bulbs are produced to be distributed worldwide. Now, to put that number in perspective, that's enough for every person on the planet to get 2 bulbs. Not only is this a huge industry, when the flowers are in bloom, it's absolutely breathtaking. Of this astonishing figure, approximately 2 billion are tulip bulbs. Most of what we're familiar with in this country are hybrid tulips with large showy blooms. But equally beautiful are the species tulips. They're small and have grown wild for thousands of years, unimproved or hybridized. In my garden, I grow several varieties, like this Clusiana with long petals that can be different colors on the outside and inside, and also this clear yellow one called Tarda, as well as the bicolored Saxatilis. You plant these little guys just like you do the big ones, except since these are more reliably perennial, I like to plant them in areas that are a little bit out of the way so they won't be disturbed. When you purchase species tulips, make sure they're grown from cultivated stock. This should be clearly indicated on the packaging. This is important because many populations of wild tulips have been depleted in their native environment of Turkey, sold on the black market. So be a responsible consumer and always check the label. We often have to think ahead in the garden. So let me inspire you with some of these beautiful daffodil blooms. If you'd like this kind of beauty in your garden next spring, you'll need to plant your bulbs now. You can't believe the varieties that are available. There are literally thousands. Just take a look at some of these. And that's not even scratching the surface of all the different colors and flower forms. Daffodils are a snap to grow. All you need is full sun, even partial shade will do, and well-drained soil. If you plant them properly, they'll come back year after year with blooms. I always try to work in a generous dose of compost or peat moss and bone meal, usually about 2 to 3 tablespoons per bulb. When I plant, I like to group the bulbs in clumps of at least 15, spacing them about 6 to 8 inches apart. I'm often asked, how deep do you plant these? Well, a good rule of thumb is to plant them at a depth 3 times the width of the bulb. So in this case, it would be 1, 2, 3, about this deep. One of the problems with other spring flowering bulbs, such as tulips, is that squirrels and gophers will often dig them up and eat them. It's not the case with daffodils. They're repulsed by their flavor. Now, if you want to enjoy daffodils in your garden this spring, now's the time to prepare for them. So pick up your bulbs early. so you can get the best selection. During the fall, when I'm outdoors enjoying the garden, the first thing I think of is the color of leaves. They would have to be at their very best this time of year. The range of their color is magnificent. All of this beauty reminds me of what excellent compost leaves can make. Over the course of the season, I gather as many of them as I can to use in my garden next year. In just a few months, I'll turn these dry brown leaves into a rich humus that's loaded with good things for my garden. Now, over the years, I've learned a few tips that help make the composting process a bit more efficient. First, I always look at composting materials in two divisions, green and brown. By layering these two at about a 50-50 ratio, you can yield some impressive results. Green materials consist of anything green or high in nitrogen. Brown materials, on the other hand, are a source of carbon, and these leaves are ideal. I also like to break up old bales of straw like this. Now, when you add leaves to your compost bin, don't let them mat down in thick layers. You see, this will exclude much needed oxygen from the process. Alternating thin layers of green and brown is the best approach. Water is also a key ingredient. Keeping the materials moist is like putting fuel on the fire. Now remember, your fall leaves are worth their weight in gold when you throw them in the compost bin. Pruning and planting for summer, up next. Earlier, we focused on spring blooming bulbs. Now let's talk about bulbs for summer. That is, if you're willing to expand your definition of a bulb, then there's a whole world of possibilities out there. And by planting in the spring, you can enjoy blooms and interesting foliage all summer long. Like the Gladiolus, these are a snap to grow. Now, while this may look like a bulb, it's actually a corm. These are very popular with florists. It's because the blooms last so long. Now, if you plant these, I recommend that you do it over the course of the summer, every 2 weeks, so you'll have a continuous crop to cut. And a natural for container gardens is the beautiful Canna. I like it not only for its wide range of beautiful bloom colors, but also for its bold foliage, great texture in the garden. When you select the rhizome, you see it grows from a structure like this instead of a bulb. You want to select rhizomes that are crisp and firm and have a prominent bright eye like this. For lots of showy blooms throughout the summer and right up until cold weather, you might give dahlias a try. They come in a wide range of colors and flower shapes. And as you might have guessed, they don't grow from a bulb either. They come from a funny looking structure like this called a tuber. Structure is very important in the garden, and these hollies are a good example of this. I planted these about 7 years ago, and as you can see, they're doing very well. But to maintain this form, I have to prune them a couple of times a year. Once in late winter to shape them up. I like to wait as long as I can so the birds can enjoy all of the berries. And then again about this time in early summer, just after they've flushed with all of this new growth. Pruning keeps these hollies at a manageable size, and each time I make a cut, it causes multiple stems to come out, giving the overall plant a denser, thicker appearance. Pruning also helps me to maintain the strict conical form. If I allowed these to sprawl without pruning them, they wouldn't be as visually interesting. Also, once I get the plant where I want it in terms of size, I'm careful not to over-fertilize and produce a lot of excessive growth that'll just be lost to the shears later on. This is also the time of year I remove small limbs from my crabapples. By doing this, I can create an interesting form with the trunks. Clearing away all of the lower branches improves air circulation below and allows me to create a beautiful canopy above. And by keeping everything pruned above eye level, I can see and enjoy more of my garden. And it's not just hedges and ornamental trees that need some measured, judicial pruning. Cutting back some of our favorite garden flowers at the height of the season is a way to encourage blooms later in the year, not to mention stronger plants. Through trial and error, I've come up with ways to make tall and leggy plants look more compact and fuller. Take these Rudbeckia as an example. This variety is called herbstone. Now, it's just a member of the black-eyed Susan family, a favorite perennial that blooms about this time of year. I grow these all along the side of my fence here, but they grow so vigorously they can get up to 7 or 8 feet tall by the time they flower. The best way for me to deal with this to help keep them in scale with my fence and hedge is to cut them off at about half. It'll delay the bloom a bit, but it'll keep the flowers down where I can enjoy them. For other perennials like this Monarda or Bee Balm, I can extend the bloom of this clump of flowers for up to 4 weeks by simply cutting the stems around the edge and leaving the ones in the center. The clump blooms in the center first and then is followed by those around the edge. However, the best reason for me as a gardener for cutting back tall perennials is that once I do it, the plants are stronger and shorter, and I don't have to stake them. But if you grow some of the taller varieties, you know that after a certain point, you're going to have to give them a little support. Like I've done with this old-fashioned Dame's rocket. It's a biennial. I've just taken some concrete reinforcing wire and created a cage. These are simple to put together. I make them about 30 inches long, and at the base I leave a long tine to stick into the ground. And on the ends, I curl a piece of the wire back so they'll latch together. This material is relatively inexpensive, and you can find it at any builder's supply. A few years ago, I made up several of these so I could use them just as I needed them in my garden. They'll last forever. These cages are also effective in bringing large plants under control, like this big ornamental grass called variegated miscanthus. It's become a garden thug, smothering some of my roses and summer phlox. I'll just connect 2 of these and wrap it around the base. An even more natural and less expensive approach to keeping your flowers up where you can enjoy them is to use twigs. This is particularly effective for light and airy perennials like this baby's breath. There's nothing to using them, just push the sticks into the ground and weave the plants up through them. Now, doesn't it make sense after you've spent so much time growing such beautiful flowers to give them a little support? Don't panic if your plants arrive in the mail looking like this. Details next. I'm never surprised that spring has officially arrived because my garden is full of bloom and, well, my mailbox is always full of these gardening catalogs. There seems to be no end to the variety. I always try to buy most of my plants from local garden centers or nurseries, but sometimes specialty and hard-to-find items are easier found through these catalogs or the internet. But if you've ever ordered anything through the mail, you know sometimes they can arrive a little worse for wear. Let's take roses, for example. When I order bare root roses, I take them out of the packaging immediately, and I soak them for at least 8 hours in water, but never more than 24. This rehydrates the plant. This also applies to other bare root plants, such as fruit trees, berry and grapevines. When ordering perennials, whether they're bare root or in containers, I like to step them up into slightly larger pots and let them acclimate before I introduce them to the garden. Probably the most important thing to remember when ordering plants through the mail is to order them through a reputable company. They can be a big help. And you see, it's important to them to ensure your success. If you'd like more information on how to handle plants when you receive them through the mail, check out our website.
A great companion to P. Allen Smith Gardens is our website, pallensmith.com. Log on to learn more about today's topic. You'll also get hands-on gardening tips, design ideas, lessons in garden history, delicious recipes, and crafts projects that will take you from season to season, all beautifully illustrated with thousands of colorful images that will inspire your creativity. Plus, don't miss Allen's free weekly newsletter delivered straight to your inbox, all just a mouse click away at pallensmith.com.
Today we've covered a wide range of topics, all of them designed to help you stay ahead in the garden. There are many more time and money-saving tips on my website. That's pallensmith.com, and I hope you'll visit me there soon. Until next time, from the garden, I'm Allen Smith.
In this garden I dream of a bed of flowers. Bluebirds sing of the beauty all around us. And every time the sun comes out, I can't help but smile. Oh, no, I can't help but smile.